What is the true meaning of luck? Is it the moment of discovery, or what comes after? Our journey begins with a paradox. A man who found everything, only to lose it all. His name was James Marshall. N.N. 1848. Marshall, a simple carpenter, was building a sawmill on California's American River. During a final inspection, a shimmer caught his eye, a dance of light in the river's depths that would alter history. It was gold. In a flush of excitement, he shared his incredible find with his crew. The metal was tested and proven to be of the highest quality. But this discovery was not a foundation for fortune. It was a spark in a powder keg. The next day, his crew was smaller. The day after, smaller still. Soon, Marshall was working alone. His men had vanished, consumed by a new, burning desire. When Marshall went looking, he found not just his crew, but hundreds of trespassers swarming the riverbed, their eyes glinting with the same manic energy. He had unknowingly unleashed a plague, the California Gold Rush. Ironically, Marshall himself caught the fever, desperately panning in the very river he had made famous. But lightning never struck twice for him. He spent the rest of his years searching, and on the 10th of August 1885, died penniless, a ghost haunting the very discovery that promised him the world. And if Marshall's story is a paradox, then John Sutter's is a tragedy. Sutter was the landowner, a Swiss immigrant with a grand vision. He owned 49,000 acres, a gift from the Mexican government, on which he dreamed of building a self-sufficient city for his people. It was his land, his river, and his employee, James Marshall, who brought him the first fateful nugget. Sutter, a man of foresight, immediately tried to secure his position, quietly buying up surrounding land while commanding Marshall to keep the discovery secret. But a secret so monumental cannot be contained. A newsman named Samuel Brannan blew the story wide open, and the floodgates broke. Over 300,000 people descended upon Sutter's property like locusts. They were not settlers for his city, they were squatters and thieves. They tore his land apart, stole his livestock, and destroyed his crops. His workers deserted him, and his grand dream crumbled into dust. Sutter spent the next 3 decades in a bitter legal battle, seeking compensation. On the 16th of June, 1880, he finally won, awarded $50,000 a fortune worth over $1 million today. But fate had one last cruel joke to play. John Sutter died just 2 days later. In a final, poignant twist, his son would eventually build the city his father envisioned on that very land, Sacramento. And some did find wealth, but what did it cost them? Consider George Carmack. In 1896, far north in the remote Klondike River of Canada, he and 2 others stumbled upon nuggets while fishing. The find was so immense that they staked their claim and, within weeks, had panned enough gold to ensure they'd never work another day in their lives. Their discovery ignited the great Klondike Gold Rush. But even with more money than he could ever spend, Carmack wasn't immune to the sickness. Gold fever infected his soul. He became obsessed, not with the wealth, but with the thrill of the find. For the next 26 years, he chased that feeling, staking claim after claim across the mountains of America, searching endlessly for a shadow of his former luck. He died in 1922, a rich man who was still prospecting, forever a slave to the memory of that first glorious discovery. But for every dream that curdled, another was born. Clarence Berry was the son of a 49er, one of the thousands who had sought fortune in California and found nothing. Growing up on his father's tales of failure, Berry was barely making a living on a fruit farm. In 1896, he moved to Alaska and took a job as a bartender. One night, a man paid for his drink with raw gold nuggets. It was George Carmack. "Where did you find this?" Berry asked. The man replied simply, "At the Klondike." That was all it took. Berry, his wife, and his brother put their faith in a stranger's words and set off on the perilous journey. They braved the treacherous mountain passes, hauling a year's worth of supplies, fueled by the hope of rewriting the family story. They staked a claim and began to dig into the frozen earth. For weeks, they found nothing. Then, 30 feet down, they hit it. Not just gold, but buckets of it. They amassed a fortune worth $5 million today and left just as the masses began to pour in. They didn't just strike it rich, they built a legacy, founding an oil company that trades on the New York Stock Exchange to this day. They had surpassed all the men in their father's stories. And then there are those who win without ever lifting a shovel. Samuel Brannan was a printer and a shrewd entrepreneur in San Francisco. When men began paying for goods at his store with gold nuggets from nearby Sutter's Fort, he didn't grab a pan, he grabbed an opportunity. He bought every single mining pan he could find for 20 cents apiece and sold them for $15 each, the modern equivalent of $600. Knowing he owned the only newspaper, he was set to announce the discovery. But when his own workers heard the news, they immediately abandoned their posts to rush for the goldfields. Unfazed, Brannan ran into the street, shouting, "Gold! Gold! Gold!" at Sutter's Fort with his own voice. He single-handedly triggered the rush and profited immensely, becoming California's very first millionaire. His fortune wasn't luck. It was pure, unadulterated ingenuity. N. Sometimes, however, it is just about luck, a moment so pure it feels like a miracle. In Victoria, Australia, long after its gold rush had faded, two miners named John Deason and Richard Oates were still trying their luck. As Deason scraped at the soil, his pickaxe hit something hard. It wasn't a rock. Just 1 inch beneath the surface lay a gold nugget so large and embedded that when he tried to pry it loose, his pickaxe snapped in half. Frantically clearing the dirt, they unearthed a solid gold mass 2 feet long and a foot deep. It was the largest gold nugget ever discovered in history, weighing 241 pounds. They had to break it into 3 pieces just to move it? The sale made them both fabulously wealthy overnight, a reward not for cleverness or obsession, but for simply being in the right place at the right time. And what of luck in our own time? In 1980, Kevin Hiller was recovering from back surgery in Australia. His doctor's orders were simple: walk as much as possible. To pass the time, he and his wife bought a couple of cheap metal detectors. One day, just a few steps from their parked car, Kevin's detector gave a faint signal. He almost walked on, thinking it was a malfunction, but something made him turn back. His wife, seeing him on the ground from a distance, ran over, fearing the worst. She found him shaking, tears streaming down his face. In a small hole next to him was a glimmer of gold. As they dug, it just kept getting bigger. They had found an 18-inch, 61-pound nugget of 99% pure gold, the second largest ever found. In shock, they hid it under their bed for days before selling it to a Las Vegas casino for $1 million. The find transformed their lives, allowing them to buy their first home right next to the field that had given them everything. It was a fortune born not from a feverish search, but from a simple walk, proving that sometimes the greatest treasures find us when we aren't even looking.